Welcome to the 2020 WhistleStop Winter Haven Virtual Hobnob. Welcome. My name is Katie Worthington Decker, and I am the President and CEO of the Greater Winter Haven Chamber of Commerce, and it is my privilege to be your MC for this video series. WhistleStop Winter Haven is traditionally an in-person event where members of the public can come together to shake hands and get to know the candidates that are on the ballot through one-on-one conversations. But as we all know, 2020 is a year to adapt, so we have pivoted this event to an online series of Zoom interviews. We certainly hope you take the time to listen to each of the candidates and learn a little bit more about them and what they stand for and while they're running. We have invited every candidate on the ballot in Polk County to participate, and we want to thank those candidates who did decide to do it. Full disclosure, the Winter Haven Chamber does not endorse any individual candidates, but we do believe in an informed electorate. So we hope that you find these videos useful as you are getting ready to fill out your ballot. I'd like to take a moment to thank our sponsors for this video series. Our presenting sponsor is Citizens Bank and Trust. Our Meet the Candidates sponsor is Spectrum. Our additional sponsors include Citrus Connection, the Hemingway Group Realtors with Crosby & Associates, John Wood Realty, and the campaign of Sam Killebrew, District 41. As I mentioned, there are two important dates for you to remember coming up in this election. On August 18th is the primary. And while there are the traditional Democrat and Republican primary races, there are also some very important local races that will be decided during that election. These include School Board, County Commission, Supervisor of Election, and the Lake Region Lakes Management District. And of course, the second date to remember is the general election that will be held nationally on November 3rd. We hope that you will find this video series useful, and please encourage your family and friends that are eligible to vote to do so. It is our greatest right as American citizens. Enjoy. Well, Debbie, thank you so much for participating in our 2020 virtual WhistleStop Hobnob. By purchasing your virtual booth, you have given the Greater Winter Haven Chamber of Commerce the opportunity to really educate the public about the candidates and the issues that are on the ballot in August and November. And so we really wanted to thank you for participating today. And because you have purchased your virtual booth for this event, the Florida Division of Elections does require you to make the following statement.
This is a political advertisement paid for and approved by Debbie Hannifan for Polk County Supervisor of Elections.
Very good. Awesome. Well, now that we got that out of the way, let's go to the good stuff now. So Debbie, you are running for Supervisor of Elections. So tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Okay, well, I am Debbie Hannifan. My husband and I both are Lakeland natives. And we live in the historic area of Lake Morton in Lakeland. We have been married for 27 years, and we have two children, twin sons, Nathan and Noah, and they just turned 22. I went to University of South Florida, and go Bulls. And my husband works for in restaurant design. And I'm a realtor, and we just grew up here. We love Polk County and never left.
Well, I'm a UCF Knight, but I won't hold that against you. We got that nice war of I-4 going on here. But so Supervisor of Elections, out of all the seats that you could have picked to run for, why did you pick to run for this particular one?
I was called to run for this office. I got engaged in politics probably around 20 years ago. I went through a program called Partners in Policymaking, and we learned how to advocate for our family members' rights who have disabilities. And we learned about the legislative process. We learned how bills became law, and how to be kind of like a citizen's lobbyist for the legislators, to be able to know our story and know what we believe in and how we feel like people with disabilities should have choices and education, where they work, and supported living. And I just fell in love with the Constitution and our founding fathers, and how that their forethought so many, hundreds of years ago, to be able to see that we are of the people, by the people, for the people. We, the elected officials, do work for us, the constituency. And so as that developed over time, I started working on campaigns. And so I did a lot of grassroots training through different nonpartisan organizations, and learned how to precinct strategize and how to get candidates elected. So that's where I got started in all of this, is working campaigns. And then as I gained more knowledge and more information, I just found myself doing my work and then hurry up, let me get to work on this campaign. And that developed over time, and that it just was a natural fit. I've worked almost every job duty that you can do from outside the office as it pertains to election work, I have done. So, and then I guess the culmination of all of that within the party of, in 2018, I ran, actually 2016 and 2018, I ran election day operations for the party. And in 2018, I also oversaw the recount process.
Okay. And so with the supervisor of elections, for people that aren't as familiar in what that position does, and I think a lot of people don't even realize it is an elected position. So thank you for doing this, so we can educate people that it is an elected position. But what does a day-to-day look like? What is that office responsible for?
Well, I mean, first of all, they are a constitutional officer for the county. And so they do not actually write any laws. They implement their particular area. So, the sheriff, tax collector, property appraiser, clerk of the court, they each have their area that they oversee. So for the supervisor of elections, what they are responsible for are conducting all of the elections in a fair and efficient way. But also they are responsible for the voter rolls. They are responsible for securing the locations for in-person voting. They're responsible for all of the training for all of the poll workers for in-person voting. So it's a very, very large, it's a large budget. It's a large staffing initiative that comes every 2 years, sometimes even more recent than that when you add in the municipals that are overseen by the office. But they have a staff of 24 people full-time, and then it goes anywhere up to 1,500 is what I've heard during an election such as this election cycle.
Mm-hmm. And I think you brought up a really good point, because I think a lot of the voting public thinks of election years every 4 years, because that's obviously the one that hits all the 24-hour news cycles with the presidential elections. But realistically, there's almost an election every single year. If you add in the gubernatorial years, the municipal elections, for example, in Winter Haven, the municipal elections are in off years on purpose. And then ours is in November and Auburndale's is in April. And I mean, it's really kind of all over the map. So there's something that you're gearing up towards within the supervisor elections office almost all the time.
Yes.
And then just the amount of data and information that the supervisor elections office holds for people that are running. I mean, that you can go and get a list of everyone that requested their absentee ballot if you're a candidate and you want to send a mailer. I mean, it's just amazing the amount of data that the supervisor elections is responsible for.
90,000 this week.
Yes. That's amazing. That's amazing. So what would be your top priorities as supervisor of elections?
Well, and this is a snapshot situation. What has hit my desk over the last, I've been campaigning for a year. Okay. What I started out campaigning for and on is very different now, looking at 4 weeks before the campaign. Being in charge of the election day operations for 2 cycles, we knew that there were some issues, training issues that needed to improvement with in-person voting. And that's the precinct clerks and the people, the actual poll workers, making sure that that was a transparent process and that they were doing their due diligence to make sure that every person who wanted to vote was given that opportunity to vote. So since then, we have found that there's a huge voter registration issue. It's actually kind of a default with the DMV system that came to light 2 weeks ago. And that would be a top priority because it affects our voter rolls. The felons that we're hearing about, the felons' rights to vote, which was just overturned again last Thursday, that would be a top priority. And it should be the top priority of the sitting supervisor because it goes into effect now. So August 18th is affected. This election that is coming up in weeks is affected by that ruling. So to ensure that felons who have not had their rights restored are not voting, that is the ruling from the U.S. Supreme Court of Appeals. So the voter rolls are incredibly important when we think of the people who have died and worked their life long to ensure the right to vote for those that are legally allowed to vote. We want to make sure that that is protected for those that are eligible. Number 2, the other big issue that I have found is with the website. We have a lot of, I guess, basically we want to improve the convenience, but also the confidence in voting and just the sample ballot, even on the website, is very, very buried. There's things that could be done with a website revision that would put the information right to, one click away for voters to get information about candidates and information about when they vote, how they vote, why are they not allowed to vote in this particular primary or that primary. Information that I think would maybe educate them to a point where they would want to participate more and they would be more confident in the process. I think we would see more people engage and want to participate. So those are kind of 3 things. Those are kind of the crisis, I think, right now that would have to be done right away, immediately.
And so thinking about, the seat that you're running for, it's a countywide seat, obviously. So people from all over Polk County will be voting. So if you could be speaking face to face, which we all wish we could be, to a voter, what would you say to them to convince them to vote for you over your opponent?
It's hard to, everybody has a different concern. So first of all, I would listen. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges with some of these elected officials. Are you listening to your constituents? What is it that they need help with? What is it that they need more resources for? It's hard to it's hard to find fault with somebody who's been in office for 20 years, but she has only been opposed one other time. So what I would say is my opponent has been, in office for 20 years. All of her on-the-job training was done there in the office. I have 15 years of boots on the ground experience in the precincts of Polk County. I am more qualified today to take over this office than my opponent was when she was elected 20 years ago. So we've had a couple of in-person debates, and she does speak to her certificates and her continuing education. Of course, I would be doing the same thing if elected. She does have certifications and elections training because she was paid to attend those things while in office. I have 15 years of training and experience because I'm passionate about elections integrity, and I have the willingness and the drive to get it done right.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much for taking the time out today to let the voters learn a little bit more about you as a person, but also what your priorities would be in this role and why you picked this role to run for. So we really appreciate you participating in our virtual hobnob, and good luck on your race.
Great. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Of course.